Right, let's get the intro in. Sorry about the slowness. We are a little bit behind. Here we go. Welcome to warrenthornton.com in conjunction with Unprecedented TV. And of course, if you are watching on X, if you are watching on Rumble, you're watching on Kick, and everybody's watching live. If you want to see the second half of the show, you'll have to come across to warrenthornton.com. I am joined, as always, by my wonderful co-host, Paul Brooker. Good evening, Paul. How are you?
Good evening, Warren. I'm doing very well. Extremely excited about our special guest tonight. Hello, Paul, down there. I see you.
Yes, absolutely. And so let's get straight into it. We have with us the leader of the Britain First Party, Paul Golding. Good evening, Paul. How are you?
Good evening, Paul and Warren. It's great to be here this evening. It's a long overdue. I do apologise, but you finally managed to nail me down this evening.
Yes, we understand you're an extremely busy man. The Britain First Party. So let's get into this. Britain First is obviously a very well-known political party, and you've been around the political scene for many, many years. When did you, take us through your journey of how, first of all, you got started in politics and why Britain First?
Right, so I actually got involved in nationalist or patriotic politics when I was 16 years old. Finished secondary school. I watched an old British National Party election broadcast, you know what they have on the TVs during the elections.
Yes.
And it was so patriotic and it was so powerful. It just inspired me. And I think very, very quickly I got involved in the old British National Party. Now, at the time, there was nothing else. There was no alternatives. There was, the Tories, and then there was the British National Party. And
Yes.
there was obviously a lot of things wrong with the old British National Party, especially at that point. But at the time I joined, when I was only 16, Nick Griffin and various other people in the party were contesting the leadership of John Tyndall. And it was essentially a clash between people who wanted to modernise the British National Party, take it forward, emulate what's happened on the European continent with Jean-Marie Le Pen and the Front National and so on, and try and become more mainstream and more professional and more political. And obviously John Tyndall was the opposite. He wanted to stay, purist, old National Front, and so on. Nick Griffin won the election, and very quickly I rose up the ranks and became a confidant and very close to Nick Griffin. And he appointed me as director of publicity and various other posts and so on. And that was 26 years ago. And I've that most people haven't been in politics that long.
No.
And I don't know how I've survived that long in politics. It's a very long time. But when I sit here now with Britain First, I think to myself, this is the era that you've been waiting for 26 years, because back then it was a barren wasteland for anyone who was right-wing and patriotic.
Yeah.
Now I can walk outside this office. This is the Britain First London office, by the way. I can walk outside and there'll be Union Jacks and English flags on all the lampposts. And there'll be migrant hotel protests within stone's throw. So things are just completely changing overnight these days. The tide is turning. So I was involved in the old British National Party. I was very close to Nick Griffin for many, many years. I was elected as the South East's first BNP councillor in 2009. I helped out with the election victories I think the BNP at its height done extremely well. I mean, they've done the best out of all the different parties that have claimed to be, patriotic and right wing.
Yeah.
They had over 50 elected councillors. They had 2 seats in the European Parliament, a seat on the Greater London Assembly. They were invited on to Question Time. They got to a point where they were receiving 2 million votes in a national election. Now, considering, look where Reform is now, they only received 4 million votes in a recent election. So the old BNP done extremely well,
Yes.
so to speak. But then it all came tumbling down and it all crashed. It's a complete crash and burn situation. Nick Griffin was elected as an MEP in the European Parliament. And just like that, he cared more about what was happening in the European Parliament, preparing and delivering his 1 minute speeches, and living that kind of champagne and caviar lifestyle with all the other MEPs in the European Parliament, completely neglecting the struggle back at home. And his disastrous performance on Question Time, and the fact that, as well, this has to be emphasised. Back then, the establishment were terrified of the growth of the British National Party.
Yes. Yeah.
Their response was to give a massive platform to Nigel Farage to hoover up all the angry patriotic votes and to neutralise them in a safe dead end. And it worked successfully because all of a sudden UKIP, they were on the telly 24/7. They started talking about mass immigration for the first time in 25 years. And that just completely pulled the rug from under the BNP. And that combined with the fact that Griffin wouldn't seem to leave the European Parliament gravy train. And, it's like the House of Lords. Every time you go and sign on as an MEP in the European Parliament, you get £300 straight away as soon as you sign on. So he was just completely submerged within the European Parliament gravy train. And the fact that his disastrous show on Question Time, the fact that he was in the European Parliament, the fact that UKIP stole their funder, and so many other different reasons, just made the whole thing crash and burn. And of course, they don't exist anymore. So that was it. I resigned from the old BNP in mid 2010. I was an elected councillor at the time in Swanley in South East London. So I've held office myself, only at local council level. So I resigned, and hundreds of other activists and organisers and branch leaders all resigned at the same time. The whole thing came crashing down. And it was about a year in the wilderness, wondering what to do, just, monitoring the situation and so on. But, quite frankly, having a break because, being so young and submerged in like frontline nationalist politics can really take a toll on you from the age of 16. It's quite intense. And then about a year after, we decided to launch Britain First. But we launched Britain First. The foundation of Britain First was quite simple. The BNP, as you know, had a lot of bad apples. It had 95% ordinary working class people who had nowhere else to go, who wanted to save this country, stop immigration. But there was that hardcore of bad apples that were tolerated, even facilitated, I would say. There was never any discipline within the old British National Party. There was never any punishment for people who acted the fool. So what happened is that they provided the media with the ammunition that allowed them to make the BNP brand toxic.
Yes.
When we launched Britain First, we said, we're not going to do that. We're going to be very, very disciplined. Anyone who misbehaves in any way, shape or form is expelled immediately. And we're going to create this culture of, no tolerance, basically, towards idiots who indulge in self-defeating extremism. Now, at the time as well, the English Defence League was in its heyday.
Yes.
And we were looking at the English Defence League and they were making an impact, but it just looked terrible. I mean, it was just hordes of drunks and football lads walking around with Stellas and Heinekens on the streets.
I remember it well, yeah.
Yeah, you remember. So we basically launched Britain First. We said it's needed because we need to avoid the mistakes that the BNP made and stay away from the hooliganism and the drunkenness of the EDL. So it needs to be disciplined and tightly controlled. Now, for the first 3 years of Britain First, it was as you know, with all new ventures, it was an absolute nightmare. I mean, we were living in poverty. It was
Yeah.
no members, no donors, no support, no profile. No one knew who we were. It was a real uphill struggle. And then something happened, the murder of Lee Rigby in
Yes.
2013. So this was like 3 years after, 2.5, 3 years after. And there was something, because I grew up in southeast London. I grew up in Erith, just down the road, so a few miles away from where Lee Rigby was slaughtered.
Same here. I was a Millwall boy.
And that really deeply affected me. The fact that it's so brazenly and so public, and so close to where I'd grown up. And I've been to Woolwich all my life. And that really deeply affected me. And I started to focus on radical Islam. And at that time, it was running amok. I don't know if you
Yeah.
remember back then, you had Anjem Chowdhury and all of his network, all these goons running around the streets. I mean, they were just given free rein everywhere. So that really upset me deeply, because I went to the scene in Woolwich the next day and I said, something has to be done, because they're just running amok. They're everywhere. They're in the news. They're calling for jihad. They're saying UK go to hell. So I
Yeah.
went away from the Lee Rigby murder site the next day and thought about it and thought, what can we do? And I gathered together about 20 activists in the sort of Kent area, southeast London, Kent area. A lot of them were former English Defence League, actually, former EDL. And we
Yeah.
got together, and I got everyone to a pub in Dartford, which was basically turned into our temporary headquarters. Not that they knew, but we
Yeah.
met there. We met there before every operation, everything we did. We always met there and went from there. And I said to them, I said, look, a lot of you come from the EDL, you've seen with the BNP. We're not going to have that. What we're going to do is we're going to be professional and disciplined and secretive, and we're going to go after all these Islamic terrorists. We're going to go after them. We're going to confront them. We're going to chase them out of London. We're going to suffocate their activities. And we're going to do this by being shrewd, by using our brain power rather than our brawn.
Yeah.
And that was all, they was all really enthusiastic about that approach, because no one had ever done that before. It would either been like street protests in, a random British town. That's all the EDL did, was go from town to town to town, town hopping, we used to call it. And of
Yes.
course, the BNP was strictly elections and ballot box and so on. So I said, no one's ever done this before. Let's get stuck in. Let's chase these bastards off the streets. Let's make their lives a misery. Look what they've done with Lee Rigby. Let's try and prevent another Lee Rigby by shining a light on their activities and confronting them. Let's get face to face with them and let's give them a hard time.
Yeah.
So the first thing we did was Anjem Chowdhury and his minions, they called a demonstration. They was going to walk up Brick Lane. They was meeting just next to East London Mosque. They were going to walk up Brick Lane, and they were protesting against the fact that on Brick Lane there was some shops selling alcohol, some off licenses. So
Yes.
these Taliban swine were protesting against off licenses in an area they considered to be theirs. Now, this was at the time of, do you remember the Sharia patrols in East London?
I do.
So there was so much going on, and the focus really was on radical Islamists at that time. They just killed Lee Rigby. They were doing Sharia patrols, harassing people, telling people to cover up. The big focus in politics at that time was on the radical Islamists.
Yes.
So what we went up there, and obviously Whitechapel is a dangerous area for people, for patriots and so on, because it's like 90% Bangladeshi. It's not
Yes.
like 90% Muslim. But nevertheless, we went up there, and Anjem Chowdhury crossed the road from East London Mosque, and he was trying to get into Brick Lane, and we just blocked his way. And
Yeah.
there's the photo of me holding a flag and just blocking his way, so you're not passing this flag. And there was a standoff for like an hour. And I remember going up in front of all the cameras. Oh, you're a scumbag. You're a lowlife. You are, Anjem Chowdhury. I'll find out where you live. You just wait and see if I don't. And the videos of this encounter, this first little foray onto the streets, the videos went viral, like boom, all across social media. And all of a sudden, we had like 50,000 followers on Facebook.
Yeah.
And then the next thing we did was we found out where Anjem Chowdhury lived. He lived in a place called Bromley Road in Walthamstow in East London. So we found out where he lived. And for 3 days solid, I put a surveillance unit on his house. and they were just watching. And on the third day, they saw him pull up and walk inside with his family. And they rang me up straight away and said, "We've got him." So a few days later, I organised a huge team of like 20, 25 activists. We turned up, we pulled up in a few roads down and we marched round to his house. And then when we got there, we think, oh, he's not in. What a complete waste of time. And then all of a sudden, pandemonium broke out and I heard everyone shouting and chasing this car up the road. And it was actually Anjem Chowdhury had pulled into the road to park up while we were outside his house.
Yeah.
And my activists, I lost control of them. They just chased his car. They were on the bonnet. They were hanging off of his doors and so on. And he was like a rabbit in the headlights. He was terrified and he drove off and sped off in his little car. And then we started getting threats from these Islamist terrorist groups and these vigilante groups. So we literally went straight to East London Mosque, did a live stream on Facebook and said, "Here we are. You know, come and find us." We waited there for an hour and no one came down, even though they'd been threatening us. So they said, "Don't go back to Anjem Chowdhury's house." So we went straight back to his house and we did another live stream. We said, "Here we are. What are you going to do?" And then we found
What was the idea? But what was the idea behind that? Or was it to confront him about his behaviour? Or
well, he was the man who radicalised the killers of Lee Rigby. So he was,
yeah,
and he was the chief spokesman of radical Islam in Britain. So he was number one target for us.
yeah,
So we went to where he worked. We went to his house. We ambushed him outside his house. He started calling it, well, he was calling public demonstrations, but only like 30 of them would turn up. But like we would turn up on the other side of the road and we would wait and then we would charge his protests, just completely charge them, you know, like charge of the Light Brigade straight into his protest and the police would be rugby tackling us to the floor. Then we found out where all his lieutenants or his lieutenants lived. Abu Izzadeen, we went to his house, we went to where he worked. And then there was so many others. Abdul Mahid, um, I can't even remember most of their names. But when they would turn up for their little protest, we would like chase them down the road. We would confront them. We would charge their demos. And I was getting arrested and arrested and arrested and arrested. And we were just making their lives a misery. And we were putting them under tremendous pressure. Can you imagine
yeah,
being under that much pressure? You can't go outside your front door because we're there. You can't go to work because we're there. Every time you go out in public, we're there and we're chasing you around and making your life a misery. But these people were vile Taliban-style terrorists and they needed to be confronted. But every time we did a video, it would go viral. Every time anything happened, we would upload slick videos to social media and they'd accumulate millions of views. And this is how Britain First became famous, well known, and became a household name.
yeah,
And then eventually, after like, you know, getting arrested 15 times, prosecuted, and, you know, death threats and terror threats and so on, uh, after a while, it kind of fizzled out because there were no more Islamists left to confront.
yes,
They'd all been rounded up. The fact we'd shined such a spotlight on all their activities over a few years, and we dragged their activities and made them so public, drawn so much attention to them. We forced the police to start taking them seriously. The
yes,
police, the authorities couldn't allow them to keep running around with their little extremist Taliban demos shouting, you know, death to the UK, the UK go to hell, because we were there confronting them, getting arrested, you know, trying to charge their demos, and millions of people were seeing all of this. And it
yes,
created such a huge tidal wave of support for Britain First because everyone around the country was like, well done. You know, it's about time someone got stuck into these ISIS style extremists who are just running around under the protection of the police with their Sharia patrols, you know, and we really did turn up the temperature in
yeah,
places like East London. Like one of our members had a decommissioned army snatched Land Rover that had just come back from Afghanistan. Well, we said, fine, we'll have that. And we used to drive up and down Brick Lane in this army snatched Land Rover with our Union Jacks, giving out Christian patrol leaflets. All of this created an absolute frenzy of
storm. Yeah, I
yeah,
remember
a
it. Yeah,
huge storm. Yeah. and it went viral. And we ended up at the height of our social media following. We had something like 2.2 million followers on Facebook, and we were reaching like 15 million Brits every single week.
Yes.
And then in 2018, they, Zuckerberg and the tyranny came in, and they started censoring everyone. They closed our page down. Everyone just started being strangled with reach, and their accounts suspended, and so on. But that's how Britain first started, in a very militant and almost, you could say, paramilitary style.
Yes.
And then, of course, there was no one left to confront, because they all started getting rounded up. They all start because there's only such. I mean, Anjem Choudhury is connected to like 90 different terror plots.
Yes.
So there was only so long they could allow him free reign in the public. I mean, he's just been sent down for life in prison for supporting terrorism again.
Yes.
And then, all these different people, Abu Izzadeen and Abdul Mahid, and there's so many, I can barely even remember their names. But the spotlight we shined on all of them made them national targets, made them kind of, infamous celebrities around the country. Yes. The police were forced to clamp down on their activities. For example, there was one instance where Anjem Choudhury called a demonstration at the Indian embassy because something India was doing to crack down on radical Islamists in India. So Anjem Choudhury called for a demonstration outside India House on the Strand in London. So we went there and we confronted all the activists. But there was one activist in particular that I was confronting. It's a very young, very kind of fresh-faced looking black lad. And I was obviously saying, who are you waiting for, Anjem Choudhury? You do realise that he's a radical terrorist supporting extremist and so on. And this was all captured on film. But this particular kid, he's an African immigrant, but he was only like 18 at the time. And just like 3 weeks after that famous confrontation between myself and him, he was intercepted by the security services on his way with a huge Rambo knife, on his way to kill a British soldier, create another Lee Rigby.
Wow.
So this is what we're up against, and it was only the fact, I think, that we was confronting him and it went on the news and his specific face was on the news and I was, confronting him, that the security services may have looked into him and said, let's, what's the word? Let's do a bit of surveillance on this guy. Oh no, he's going to kill a soldier. Let's arrest him. And they arrested him on his way to kill a soldier. And what I've just said there is like, everything in a nutshell, the tip of the iceberg, you can times that, what I've just said, by 100 and like dozens of radical extremists. But this is how Britain first got started, was kind of like, you could almost say paramilitary, but not in the Northern Ireland sense. But it was, we were taking matters into our own hands, confronting radical ISIS-style extremists. And everything went vile. We ended up with a huge social media following. And we just kept up the pressure for year after year after year. And that's how we got started. And like I said, it come to like 2018, we were closed down on Twitter after Donald Trump retweeted some of our videos. Yeah. And shortly after that, we were censored on Facebook and we lost that 2.2 million followers. And it's always been an uphill struggle. Like, I've been arrested, I think, 20 times, at least 20 times, prosecuted 10 times. I've been in court 35 times, I think I counted. And I've been in 3 different prisons. And I've been attacked in prison by jihadi gangs that the authorities allowed to basically, attack me and come near me. Because I warned them when I was in HMP Elmley in Kent on the Isle of Sheppey. I warned them for days on end, these guys are launching and going to attack me. I can just see it. It's going to happen. Yeah. The authorities didn't care. And then a few days later, I was attacked in my cell and suffered quite bad injuries at the hands of this gang. So I've been in 3 different prisons and it's just been an uphill struggle. We've been censored, been imprisoned. I mean, there's so much going on behind the scenes that we have, like, for example, there's ISIS terrorists in Belmarsh prison right now in southeast London that were sent there for life for plotting to chop my head off.
Yeah. It is quite incredible how you've managed to survive, actually. Let's get into one of those arrests then. We did have, first of all, we did have Sean Murphy wanted to ask a question. Sean.
Sorry, yeah. I know where Paul's at because actually I lived. Lee Rigby was killed on the corner of um, Rectory Place by the Queen Vic, and I lived at the bottom of Rectory Place by the George the Fourth, which
Yeah.
you probably know of.
I
And
know the area. I don't know the road names, but I know the area you're talking about. Yeah, because
well,
we always go
that's the
back
one
there.
that went along by the big block of flats where he was killed
Yeah,
on Woolwich Road.
yeah,
And and you had Mulgrave School,
Yes.
which was just across the way next to the pub, the Queen Vic, on the corner. And so he was only, 300 yards from where I lived. And there was an immense problem in Woolwich at the time, because I lived in Woolwich for 30 years. And a big problem with Somalis,
yeah.
no doubt about it. There was a lot of trouble, a lot of stabbings, a lot of people, and people got killed around Woolwich
Yeah.
by these gangs.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
yeah, the thing is, the police were doing nothing. The police are doing exactly the same as they're doing now, and the prison service and the courts.
Okay.
They're corrupt as hell, but they don't do anything. And
Agree.
you'll bear me out on that, I'm sure, Paul.
Of course, 100%.
Let's get into this and you know, when we're talking about this, we'll take some questions in a minute. Try and make them questions, guys, if you can. The Paul Brooker, I'm going to bring Paul in here because Paul's been sitting there waiting patiently to jump in here. But Paul, the what we're seeing at the moment, you know, with everything that's gone on, Paul Brooker, I want to bring you on this because we've seen the rape of God knows how many young girls and everything else, and we've seen cover up after cover up after cover up. People would look at what Paul Golding did there, or Paul Golding did there, and say that was horrible, that was horrific, but nobody was sticking up for British people, Paul Brooker.
It was interesting because Paul, don't get me wrong, when you started talking, I was like, oh, this just sounds like a mob going out there looking for trouble. But then when you got towards the end of what you were saying, it made sense. You were shining a spotlight on the people that were behind the scenes on this, really. They weren't the ones at the front that were getting all the media attention and getting banged up. They sort of were, but weren't. But because you brought that attention to them, dare I say it, on their doorstep, all of a sudden the police took note, because you were going to have two sides heating up here. The ones for Islam and the ones that just wanted to stop people getting killed. And that was going to cause explosion. You know, 2.5 million people, 2.2 million people you had watching, finding out why these people were going out there and stabbing people like Lee Rigby, God rest his soul. And I'm sorry, but we need more lights shined on the darkness on all this. We do. And sitting here going, this is what it's all about. Look at what they've done to Tommy Robinson. They put him in jail for making a documentary based on facts. And you've got to sit here and go, you were doing exactly the same thing. And they turned on you in the end, because we all know their tactics are shut you down on excuse me, sorry, I've had a coughing fit this evening, gents, and everyone out there. Their tactics are take you off of social media. If they can't get you, if you don't stay quiet once you get off social media, they come for your bank accounts and then they bang you up. So, you know, it's scary what they're willing to do out there.
Yeah, well, the main thing with, you know, like I said, it could be construed as, you know, a mob of far right thugs going after, but the point of the matter was, you know, Lee Rigby was killed at that time, and we were determined to suffocate their activities, because the reason that Lee Rigby was killed is because the authorities were allowing Anjem Chowdhury and his huge network to run rampant, doing whatever they wanted. without
Yeah.
any attention, either by the media. Well, to be honest, the media did give him a lot of attention. A lot of it. We always used to see him on TV, didn't we? But the fact was, the authorities, for the exact same reason that they allow all these grooming scandals to go unpunished, without any action, without any tough action, is because they're terrified of being called racist. And the Met Police, primarily, were terrified of being called racist. So it's better, from their point of view, to just allow Anjem Choudhury and his network to do what they want. And then you won't be called racist. So there was no spotlight on their activities. They were allowed to radicalize. They were allowed to incite. Just, they're given total free rein, no opposition at all. So we had to step into that vacuum. This was our strategy to basically derail them. We wanted them to be uncomfortable. We wanted them to be on the back foot. We wanted their activities to be suffocated. I just gave you an example. Like the obvious example is that Anjem Choudhury radicalized the killers of Lee Rigby. Anjem Choudhury radicalized, and if you read my book, I talk about this young fella, this young black fella from Africa. His name's Brustrum Zayamani, and he was only 18. I mean, what he was planning to do was horrific, and he's also tried to murder prison guards while he's been in prison. I think Peterborough Prison.
Wow.
But he was only 18, and he come from a Christian background, and he got involved in Anjem Choudhury's scene, and he turned him into a terrorist. And he went to prison, but Anjem Choudhury was still out there, still turning other people into terrorists. And the police did nothing. Now, just imagine for a moment, hypothetically, if I was turning people around me into terrorists and they were launching terror attacks. They would find some way of neutralizing me, without a doubt. But they allowed Anjem Choudhury to just carry on doing what he's doing. We had to step in, and our main thing was, if we can suffocate their activities, then we could maybe stop another Lee Rigby. And that was what we did. And of course, it was vigilantism. We know that. But it was necessary. It's like we obviously, it would be nice to see a little bit of vigilantism when it comes to the grooming gangs, because sometimes when the police neglect their duty, it's up to us to protect our children. And that's what I mean. I would go to prison if it meant that one English girl wasn't groomed. I would put myself in danger if it meant that one English girl wasn't groomed by a Pakistani Muslim grooming gang.
With that, Paul, let me show you this quickly. This has happened here.
You don't do this. Call the police. Don't touch her. Excuse me.
Now that's a guy being chased out of what they consider to be a Muslim area. How close are we to having the major problem where it kicks off so bad that there's no putting the genie back in the bottle?
I think it's imminent. I really do. Another Southport attack, another Lee Rigby, anything along those lines, and it's going to explode. And like the politicians will try to blame the far right, like they did after Southport, but it's their policies that we've been warning about, myself, for decades. Their policies are going to lead this country into bloodshed and civil strife. You know, their left-wing ideology, their left-wing policies, they're going to lead us eventually into a full civil war scenario. I'm convinced of it. I've been saying it for 26 years. And I think that all we need is another like Southport attack or Lee Rigby. And I think this country is just it's going to explode. It's like a volcano just waiting to erupt.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
The thing is, like when you've been involved in this for 26 years, you get a very long-term view of things.
Yes.
And like I remember back in 2001 when you had the Muslim riots in Oldham. I remember the Hare Hill riots a few years ago in Leeds. I remember, do you remember the disturbances? I think it was in 2011 when all the immigrant communities started rioting in London.
Yes,
Um, so I think that, we've seen all of this so many times. I mean, you go back further in time to the early 1980s, we had the Brixton riots.
we did. We did. I
But we
remember them very well. Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
I was born just around that time. But the thing is, I have never, in all of my 26 years, seen vast numbers of British people go out onto the streets and just not giving a damn, kicking off
Yeah.
with the police, protesting, showing their anger. And this, of course, all happened after the Southport attack. The
Yeah.
British people just went out onto the streets all over the country protesting or even, dare I say, rioting. But it was righteous anger because of three little girls had been killed by an immigrant, by someone who's radicalized, caught with I think he was caught with an Al Qaeda training manual. They gaslighted us, told us he was a quiet Welsh choir boy from
Yes.
a Christian background. They covered it up. And then it all turned like with the passage of time, we turned out he was radicalized by Al Qaeda, and then his horrible mugshot came out, and you could see he was a violent, evil
Yes.
bastard. Do you remember
Yeah.
he was
Axel
using
Rudy
a
Cabana. Yeah.
yeah, Axel Ruger. They was using a picture of when he was young and he was looked quite cute, young black lad.
Yes.
But actually, when you saw his mugshot, what did you see? You saw a face of evil. So
Yes.
they tried to cover up his background and his motive. They tried to blame the far right for all the disturbances, and they blamed. I think they blamed it all on Tommy Robinson, and he was on a sun lounger in Cyprus at the time. But
Yeah.
but this is the point. The point is a horrible terror attack happened. Three children were murdered, and I've never seen it before. It's like spontaneous combustion across the whole
Yeah.
country, and I've never seen that before. I don't think it's ever happened in the last
I
26.
think the last time was probably the poll tax riots when everybody went completely spotty. Nillis was waiting to ask something. Nillis?
Do you think there's a connection between extreme Islamization and the security services? Because it seems to be that they've been used to destabilize both Libya and Syria, Muslims from this country. And I listen sometimes to somebody called Sheikh Imran Hussein, and he calls many Sunni Muslims Anglo Zionist Muslims because they've been funded from those sources, and he's including the Muslims of Turkey, people who have been funded by Saudi Arabia. All our mosques in Britain are funded by Saudi Arabia, and our imams are chosen from there. And
Yeah, Gulf State funding.
Okay. Paul?
Well, one obvious example of this was there was a suspicion for many, many years that actually Anjem Chowdhury was used by the security services as a honey trap in a way, because everyone was questioning when we were in action, everything I just spoke about, when we were chasing him around London, the amount of terror plots that he was connected to. I
Yes.
mean, they estimated something like 90.
Yes.
I mean, it's not a small number, like 90 terror plots that he's within the orbit of. And a lot of Muslims used to say that there's no way he could get away with that unless he was some kind of intelligence asset, because he never goes to prison, he never gets arrested, and everyone around him keeps getting nicked for terrorism.
Yes.
Is he grassing them up? And I've just said about Bushrum's Army, that young black
Yes.
fella, 18 years old, on his way to kill a British soldier. He was radicalized by Anjem Chowdhury. And how can you be connected to so many terror plots and evade police arrest, interrogation? It was baffling to everyone, even on the Muslim side of the fence for a long time. But all I know is this, that the authorities in this country don't need any encouragement whatsoever to basically put the law and common decency to one side in the interest of being pro-Muslim. We've
Yeah.
seen it with the grooming gangs. We've seen it
Yes.
with radical extremists. We've seen it with the way they bend over, like the Labour Party. They bend over backwards to maintain the Muslim bloc vote. It's just they are inordinately powerful in this country, and they hold the whip hand. I've made a career out of criticising Islamists and Islam, and look at the way I've been treated. Look at the way Tommy Robinson's been treated. But on the flip side, yes, Anjem Chowdhury's now gone to prison for a long time, but he was allowed to run amok for years until he just became too big to ignore, I think. His profile became too. So I do.
Yes, it became too low.
Yeah.
One of those. Mark Breckle.
It's absolutely right. England is lost because the actual, the king, the government, it's all for one specific minority, and it's not English people, and that's how I feel at the moment. I've lived in England all my life. I've had a family history right back to the Vikings, and you see it all over. And once a country backs people coming in, they're not your own people. There's something wrong. And that's how I see what's going now.
No problem. Lee Williams.
I was going to ask. I mean, I ain't of knowledge, but then let's explain something. Apparently, Tommy Robinson is changed over the years. Now he's supported by Israel. He's paid fundamentally money. Now he was against the Muslims and everything, which is right. He was in his right to do that. Now it's getting to the stage that is it the fact that he's actually trying to kick this off? That's the only thing I'm asking.
So what we're asking is basically how much is it for Britain? Britain first is Britain first. End of story, Paul, isn't it?
I can speak for myself and Britain first. So Britain first, the clue's in the name, and we've got a kind of hierarchy of priorities. First of all, Britain, but also the nations of Canada, Australia, New Zealand, because they're British as well.
Yeah.
Just as much
so
as
that's your thoughts along that process, because I think what Lee's trying to get at here is we've got the situation with Gaza and Israel, we've got the situation with Ukraine and Russia, and all we seem to hear from the Labour Party. I'll bring Paul Brooker in on this. Paul Brooker, all we seem to hear from the Labour Party and Keir Starmer is, I don't know whether it's because, of course, the three gentlemen who he's got locked up in Belmarsh at the moment, who have been burning his houses and his cars. But all we seem to hear is we must help Ukraine, Paul Brooker, isn't it?
Oh, there's weird things going on that just don't make sense. And they just don't. Rightly so, the Labour Party, they're importing voters. That's the scary bit. They're importing them. And I always forget, what's her name? Got caught with a video of her sitting in dare I say it, a mosque, saying, look what we did for you. We've
Angela
got
Rayner,
this.
Angela Rayner. Yeah.
Does that not show you how much of a sellout our own parties that are supposed to represent the British people are? And I sit here and I'm like, this is part of a much bigger plan. And all I can see is total control being taken from the UK people, because that is the end game. I don't care what anyone says. The Islamist extremists have been allowed to run amok, open border policies. This is to create a civil war in Britain. There's no ifs, buts, or maybes. This is all about a civil war, because once they get us fighting each other on the streets and the police lose control, they can bring the army in, they can bring curfews, they can bring digital ID, they can bring ultimate control over the people. Yeah. You can just see this is part of a much bigger plan. And Paul, I'm grateful to people like yourself for exposing what's going on and just trying to keep the lid on this, because at the end of the day, once this lid blows off, there's death in the streets on a mass scale. There's no way, no looking at this any other way.
let's get into that then, Paul. Are we talking about population replacement here, with the indigenous population just being shifted out of Britain?
Yes, absolutely. We're now a minority. And when I say the indigenous British people, I'm talking about the people that existed in this country, lived in this country for centuries, millenniums, who were here before 1948. Of course, 1948 is when the immigration invasion began. We were sold the lie that it would start off, they would just be guest workers to help us rebuild after the Second World War. Even though we had millions of demobbed soldiers who were looking for work after the Second World War, we didn't need to import anyone. And then it turned from, a few guest workers, then it turned into a multicultural society, multiracial society. And we're at the point now where we're a minority in London, Leicester, Birmingham, Manchester, so many other places. And if you fast forward the tape, you can see that we are going to be a minority in this country in 25, maybe 30 years.
Yeah.
We're on the cusp right now. I saw some very horrifying figures the other day, and it was births in the NHS 2024.
Yes.
We're only 54%.
Yep.
The next generation is already on the cusp of being a minority. And then
Yes.
you've got the situation now is not just immigration. It's a very overused term, but it is a full-on invasion. You look at the government's own statistics in 2023 and 2024, both years, 1.1 million foreigners came into this country to settle.
They did.
So they try to get you to focus on illegal immigration because it's an easy target. The numbers are very small. Oh, we've had 1,000 today. Well, 1,000's not gonna do much when you got 70 million people. They could try and get you to focus on a very small number of illegal immigrants coming over. And no one is willing to talk about legal migration, which is 1 million people every single year. And it's exasperated by the fact that we have 500,000 white British people leave the country because they're fed up with the way it's going every year. 500,000 of our people out every year, and 1 million foreigners in.
Yes.
1 million foreigners, 1.1. That's the city the size of Glasgow every single calendar year that are invading this country.
Yeah, absolutely. We will get to Eric Jones and Mark Breckle in a second. I'm just going to make a point here. There are 580 million people that live below the poverty line. And of course, we are being told that, of course, it gets worse every single day. So we take these refugees, but they are expanding at 40 million a year. So if you take 1 million every single year, you're not going to make any difference whatsoever in Europe. Why are we not helping them raise their standard of living in their own country, where their multiculturalism then doesn't clash with each other? Why don't we help them there instead of bringing them over here and importing their problems into our country? Eric Jones, Mark Breckle. Eric Jones first.
Yes, sir. Paul's exactly right about control. That's exactly what it's about. And your issue is the control of Islam over your country. I assure you of that. And it's Sharia courts that you need to stop immediately. I lived in Dearborn, Michigan for many years, and I'm here to tell you, you need to stop these Sharia courts. You're in a lot of trouble if you let that run. A lot of trouble.
There's I think there's 100 known operating Sharia courts across the United Kingdom. I've been to many of them. I've been to ones in Dewsbury, Nuneaton, East London. I've been inside some of these Sharia courts, and they are creating a parallel legal system which is at odds with the British legal system that we all need to be subservient to as a civilized society. And so many scandals are rising from these Sharia courts, where they're taking the side of husbands who subject their wives to domestic abuse and rape and stuff like this. They're taking the side of the man because the man, he owns you, apparently. So
you're correct.
There's a lot of these courts springing up, and there's going to be a lot more.
Yes, absolutely. Mark Breckle.
Again, it's not just England; it's Europe. I was looking at a blogger that, and he'd gone to Belgium, and he said The actual train station was full of vomit. They were sleeping in there. There was feces everywhere. And he said there's only like 50%, 55% of the population was Belgium. The rest of them were all foreigners. And his exact words were, the foreigners come over and make it like a shithole. And that was his exact words. He said their country's bad. And he said that they could. So it's not just England, it's actually the Europe.
Okay, let's get into a little bit of that then with Paul. Paul, Ursula von der Leyen, the whole of the European Union, as far as I can see, once again, it's like Keir Starmer. It's just all it wants to do is fight Russia, a losing battle with Russia, and pour loads of money down the drain, which of course is affecting British people. The European Union, it's a completely corrupt autocracy, awash with dirty money, isn't it?
Now on the head, absolutely. The European Union was created to, and I've been to the European Union. You would think that European headquarters in Brussels, like the European Parliament and so on, if you thought that because it's the European Parliament, you'd go in there and you'd see magnificent paintings on the walls of European culture and buildings. When I went there every time, it was very Soviet. It was all modern art. There was no European culture, traditions, nothing. You would have thought you was going into the most boring office block in Europe. And this was supposed to be the headquarters of the European Union. And of course, the idea of the European Union is to take power. It's just all part of globalism. It's like the UN, but on a smaller scale.
Yes.
It's part of transferring the national sovereignty from the nation states to a transnational organization, which then rules over you without your consent. And of course, the European Union is extremely undemocratic. It hoovers up vast amounts of the wealth from Europe. And I'm just glad that we're out of it. I really am, even though we've still got a couple of toes still on that side of the fence.
Yeah, he's desperate to get us back in. I'm going to bring Paul Brooker in on this and then get Paul to answer this question. Look, I mean, you're absolutely right. I only went to the European Union once. That was in 2021. And I couldn't get in the toilets for the amount of people who were in there taking cocaine, which was quite incredible. The major problem that I had, I actually raised the question at the time, is there any chance I can use one of those to do my daily business rather than you sitting in there sniffing your heads off? The problem that we have, isn't it, is this is being run by these bureaucrats. The ECHR, Paul Brooker, the ECHR, the European Court of Human Rights. So far, we've got this one in, one out policy, which is complete nonsense because, of course, they tried to send somebody back the other day and it didn't work. And we had another 500 come in. I mean, that's not quite working, is it?
No, it's not working at all, is it, Warren? I mean, you've just got to look at the state of play. Not being funny, we've got a navy. We're an island. We should be the easiest place in Europe to defend our shores against illegal, criminal, economic migrants, because that's their full title. They're not here fleeing war. They are here for money. They pass through 5 green countries, dare I say it, 6, before they get here. And the definition of a green country is safe to be in. Okay?
Yeah.
They pass through all those safe countries just to come to the UK. So you tell me what's really going on. The other thing as well, just to back up, Paul. Sorry, Warren.
Yep.
Muhammad, for the second year, is the most popular child's name in the UK. Second year on the trot. So you tell me now this isn't population replacement.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into this a bit then, Paul. Because we had a guy turn around and say he wouldn't get the same benefits if he left Britain. And the judge agreed with him and said he doesn't have to go because he's not going to get the same amount of money in France as he would do in the UK.
I know, it's scandalous. But the thing is, like, Europe is, you know, yes, they're all trying to get to Britain. It's because our government is the most generous. It's not it's not a state secret, is it? It's not classified information. Look, we roll out the red carpet. We give them hotels. We give them freebies. I've seen it. You all know how many migrant hotels I've been to over the years. We're talking hundreds. I've seen it all in all the different. I've met people in most of these hotels that just have got no right to be here. I've met people from Algeria, from Georgia, from China. I've met so many different people who just do not come from any kind of war zone, any kind of
Yes.
society where there's persecution. They are drawn here because of the gravy train. And, but Europe is suffering. The worst city in the whole of Europe for immigration is Brussels. And I'm
Yes.
talking 80% North African. Really, really bad. I've been to Molenbeek. You might have heard that. It's in
Yes.
Brussels. I know someone said this about Belgium a minute ago, how some areas of Belgium. Belgium's in a terrible state. I've been to Molenbeek. It's like 100% Muslim. Uh, Almost got myself killed there just walking around. They all recognize me. I don't know if anyone saw my video recently. About 6 months ago, I went on holiday to Rome, and
Yes. Yeah,
being
you did.
little bit of a training freak, I went out jogging one evening because I'd eaten too many carbonaras and junk food that day because I was on holiday. But I went out jogging, and all of a sudden I just paused and looked around me, and I thought, wow, I was in the worst ghetto you can imagine, and this was just outside the city centre of Rome.
Yeah.
And I did a video, and I was walking around speaking to these migrants. I says, "Where's the Italian people?" "Oh, no Italian people here." And it was quite shocking.
Yeah.
And I've been to Milan. Milan is terrible. It's like the third world. Even a place like Turin. And I
Yeah.
recently went to Pisa and Florence. Terrible, terrible immigration situation. I've been all over Europe. I've been to
Yeah.
Paris.
Malmo's the same.
Yeah, I've been to Paris. That's shocking. I went to Munich in southern Germany. That was shocking. And this is organised, deliberate replacement of the European peoples.
So before we bring Mark Reckle and Lee Williams in, what's Britain's first answer, Paul? What do we do?
Okay, well, hypothetically, we'll address this as though we won the next
You're in
general.
power. Yep.
We came to power, yeah. Well, first thing we would do is deploy the Royal Navy in the English Channel. We'd probably have to build or relaunch quite a lot of these airports around the country. And basically, millions of these foreigners that are in this country would be given 1 month to get out the country. We don't care where they go. We'd give them a month. They can go to wherever they want, but they've got to get out the country, or they're going to be arrested and put into prison. We'd obviously have to expand the prison system in this country. But we would make a point, just like the Libyan Navy do, of using brute force to stop some of these crossings, and that would stop it overnight. All those people in Calais would think, right, the gravy train's over. It's not going to happen anymore. We're going to go somewhere else.
Because we've seen British companies, Paul, sending the dinghies back on lorries back to the French so they can use them again.
Yeah, there's also there's a few places actually. There's one in Folkestone I've been to, and I've seen with my own eyes. It's a giant storage area, and it's just rammed with these dinghies. There's thousands in there. Thousands of dinghies in this place. I don't know what happens to them, but hypothetically, we were in power. We could stop it. Illegal immigration is the least of our worries. We could stop that overnight. We just put the Royal Navy in the Channel, fire a few guns into the air, and it would stop immediately. Everyone who then is in these hotels around the country would then be arrested and deported back to where they came from. And they say deportation's difficult. Well, it's not. Because all you have to do is you say, we will pay for your plane fare. You've got 1 month to choose where you're going.
Yes.
Go anywhere you want. We'll pay for it. Get out of our country. It's such a simple process. They say that, you have to have agreements with countries, and they might say no. No, you just give these people 1 month to get out of your country or face the consequences. And believe me, millions of them will be straight to the airports, straight to the booking center. Bang, they'll be gone. Millions.
All of a sudden, they would remember their names and date of births, I bet, and where they actually came from. Rather than, and this is a common thing, I saw an interview the other day, all of them are saying they were born in 2000 so they could be treated as children. All of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're just playing the system, aren't they?
Let's bring some people in because they've been waiting patiently. Mark Reckle, sod off airlines. Is that the answer?
Oh, definitely. But Paul Golding is right. I went to Italy. That was my last trip to Russia. And there was graffiti all over. There was Uber drivers everywhere, and none of them was Italian. And that was just the start of COVID. And again, we're talking to you about Brussels, the EU headquarters. I was watching on the TV. A guy was sleeping there. They actually took round, and he was arrested 55 times. And he was quite well known. The government
by that time
had taken his laptop away from him, all because he spoke up against his country. You know, he said there's too many illegals here and everything.
Yeah.
And they actually arrested him and took his computer away. It's unbelievable.
Thank you.
Paul's right. He's right on everything he's saying.
Thank you very much for that. Lee Williams, then MPIM.
Paul is 100% exactly what he's saying. It's a case of these dinghies, when there was ones that from Dover and whatever, there's apparently 1,000 a day coming in. That's what they say. And there was one time in Dover, 3,000 come over in one day. They're actually escorted from coaches to these places, wherever they're going to be situated. So it all seems to me be planned.
Okay.
So,
let's get MPIM in. MPIM?
Well, if you save the dinghies and bring them back to England and put more migrants in them, because if you got the Navy in the channel, just pull them across to the ships.
Yeah.
Save yourself airfare.
There you go. We can put them in sail them across it with the Royal Navy, and then let them go back to France on the dinghies where they came from, Paul.
Yeah, and then save the dinghies and take the next trip over.
Okie dokie. Paul, let's talk to Paul Goulding about this then. How long have we got before this all explodes? What's your feeling on it?
Well, it depends. Let's just pretend that there's no more like Lee Rigby or Southport attacks over the next 25 years. Well, the numbers, you know, because it's all about maths and birth rates and so on. Now, the British birth rate, British women are not having children. They're like 1.4 per British woman. That's the average. That's well below replacement. That's like, you know, committing national suicide. Yes. And it doesn't manifest itself immediately. It takes a generation or two to really kick in, and then all of a sudden your society just collapses and implodes. But if there's nothing getting in the way, then we're looking at 25 years. 25 years, we pass the point of no return. There's no way back. Things will progress so quickly and so fast that we'll end up like the whites of South Africa. We'll end up powerless and completely outnumbered. And we'll face atrocity and slaughter on a daily basis. There'll be no one there to help us. There'll be no one that cares. Just look at what the whites of South Africa have to deal with on a daily basis. That's our future. And 25 years is the point of no return.
Is there a problem? There's two questions here, because obviously there's going to be people decide to do all sorts of horrific things, and that is coming. The people that, you know, sort of what we would call the woke or liberal left, do they? I mean, they just seem to be completely blind to all this, Paul.
Well, you've got to understand that it's very difficult for human beings to put yourselves in someone else's mindset. It's almost impossible. Like when I encounter some of these extremist Muslims and they're talking about, you know, Muhammad went on a winged horse to the moon. He went to Jerusalem and then went on a winged horse to the moon. And they believe it right down to their core. And it's very hard to understand, put yourself in their mindset. Okay? So it's very difficult to put yourself in the mindset of someone like Keir Starmer or anyone who's left wing, and I include the Tory party. I even include Reform to some degree, because they're not going to turn the tide in this country. They're quite happy with multiculturalism. Nigel Farage was asked recently, quite bluntly, by a GB News interviewer, are you concerned that the British population is going to be a minority? He said, absolutely not. I'm not concerned by that at all.
Is he controlled opposition?
Oh, absolutely. Like, we had 15, you've got to understand, the establishment is a two-party system. So you've got Labour, Tory, Labour, Tory, Labour, Tory, and that worked brilliantly for 100 years. Yeah, we've had a century of Labour, Tory, Labour, Tory. The problem is, and they know it, that they can see all of these flags going up on lampposts. They can see all the spontaneous migrant hotel protests around the country. They can see the disturbances after the Southport attack, where you had large numbers of white British people coming out on the streets and just kicking off with the police because they're so angry. They're not stupid, the establishment. We had 15 years of Tory misgovernment in this country, and that broke their brand, made them toxic to such a degree. The establishment was worried, in my opinion, that they knew that one half of their two-party system was toxic and no one would ever return to that again. So they needed, now, when I said before that, when the old BNP was gathering momentum and winning seats all across the British political scene, what did they do to counter that? Well, they rolled out Nigel Farage. You're angry about immigration? Vote for Nigel Farage. He's your man. Vote for him. Because they knew he was safe. They knew that he was a safe bet. Millions of people then wasted their vote by voting for Nigel Farage. And all of those millions of votes were neutralised in a safe dead end as far as the establishment was concerned. And exactly the same thing has happened now. The Tory brand is broken. The Tory brand is toxic. It's a great risk. It's a risk to proceed after the last 3 terms of Tory government. It's a risk for the establishment to proceed with the Tory Labour circus. Yeah. So now we've gone from a duopoly to a tri-party state. So now we've got, if the Tories make a resurgence, great, back to business as usual. But it's very unlikely they will make a resurgence. So they need to be replaced. And we're going to have a new two-party system, Reform and Labour. And recently, at the last general election, 4 million people were duped into voting Reform. All of those millions of votes are now neutralised in a safe dead end. They're not a threat to the establishment. Because God forbid. Now, I also said, before we came on here, someone asked about local election results and why doesn't Britain First focus on local elections? That kind of dovetails into this. Well, Britain First fought for many, many years. We went to the High Court and back. We spent a huge amount of money, court cases, to force the Electoral Commission to register us as a political party because they kept blocking it. They turned down 9 of our applications. We had to sue them into oblivion, and we finally forced them to register us as a party. As soon as we were registered as a political party, we're not interested. We weren't interested in fighting general elections or parliamentary elections. We wanted to start at the bottom, work our way up. So we started investing all our time and energy into fighting local elections around the country. Over a period of 3 years, Britain First got some really impressive local election results. We've beaten the Tories, we've beaten Labour, we've beaten the Lib Dems, we've beaten the Greens, we've beaten Reform, we've beaten all of them in various seats. We've got some really impressive results. And then we stood in a parliamentary by-election in Tamworth. I think it was about a year and a half ago, 2 years maybe.
Yeah.
And Britain First came fourth. You got, I think it was Labour, Tory, then Reform, then Britain First. We beat the Liberal Democrats, we beat the Greens, we beat a load of parties. And I really do think that this freaked the establishment out. And so they've got this situation where the Tories are crumbling and becoming toxic, and there's millions of angry right-wing votes. Britain First is now getting impressive election results at local level, and now they've just fought a parliamentary seat, and they've come fourth. They've beaten the Lib Dems, they've beaten the Greens, and they've done really well.
They're finished, aren't they? The Lib Dems. I mean, God help us if ever they get in.
Well, they're doing pretty well because Labour's so unpopular. But the point is, as soon as we fought that parliamentary by-election in Tamworth, the next parliamentary by-election we contested, it was like a traffic light going from red to green. And on TV, newspapers, radio, it was just reform. Nigel Farage came out of retirement. And even left-wing parties now are moaning and whinging that Nigel Farage and Reform are just getting wall-to-wall coverage. And Nigel Farage has been on Question Time 38 times, which is 10 times more than his nearest competitor. He is being given, just like he did when the BNP was growing strong, they are now promoting Reform to neutralise all those millions of angry votes. Because if they didn't do that, then parties like Britain First and maybe some others would be making huge headway. But instead, Britain First fought a council election about 3 months ago on the south coast. Now, the year before, we'd fought the same area in the local elections. We beat the Lib Dems, we beat the Greens. We got a really good result. But this time, we was up against a Reform juggernaut, and we got a pathetically low percentage of the vote in the same area that we did extremely well in the year before. The difference being that we was up against this Reform juggernaut. Now, I know for a fact there's like this new party with Ben Habib, for example, gaining momentum. But when they start to contest elections against Reform, they are going to get annihilated with derisorily small results. The establishment has so successfully filled the vacuum in British politics that millions of angry people in this country are going to vote Reform, not knowing that Reform are only being promoted 24/7 because they are safe, because they're a safe bet for the establishment. And all we're really seeing is the Tory brand, which is broken and toxic.
It's a rebranding of conservative of the Conservatives, isn't it?
Exactly, because if you look at all their defections, you look at their like Dame Andrea Jenkins. You know, you just look at everyone, ex-Tory, 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 ex-Tory. It's just everyone from the Tory party is emptying into this new gravy train that the establishment is putting on TV 24/7 to try and neutralise all the angry votes across the country.
And of course, they're going to turn around and say, we'll tackle immigration, because that's what politicians do. They tell people they're going to do things, they get elected, and then they don't do them.
Well, a perfect example of that, Warren, a perfect example of that is the mass deportation situation. Now, Farage was asked in interview after interview after interview, do you support mass immigration? Do you support mass deportations? And he said quite emphatically, no, it's a pipe dream. It's unrealistic. It's an impossibility. And then when the British people began to say, we want mass deportations, then all of a sudden he does a 180-degree about turn, and he says, we want mass deportations now. So you can see that on behalf of the establishment, if the British people start to call for something in sufficient numbers, he will then jump on the bandwagon to get those.
Nope.
It's not you, Warren. It's Paul. It's frozen.
He'll come back up.
It's not me.
No, he'll come back up.
Okay. One of those. We'll just fill in until Paul comes back. He seems to have frozen at the moment. Hopefully he comes back. Hopefully you guys are enjoying what he's talking about. It is one of those where people turn around and go, "Oh, I'm not sure you should have." People are allowed on this channel to air their views. Simple as that. And they can come. As I say, they come in all shapes and sizes.
He'll come back in a sec. He's telling the truth. Ultimately, definitely.
He should be back in a short moment. Let's get into something else very quickly while we're waiting for him to come back. Then, while we're staying on there, let's take a sort of round poll of everybody who's so far. Paul here, is he your cup of tea? Is he telling the truth? Is he everything that you were hoping? Is he saying the right things that you need to do to possibly, to sway you to vote for Britain First? Mark Reckles, then Sean Murphy.
Oh yeah, he's definitely an intelligent bloke. He knows what he's talking about.
Yeah,
I'd be happy to vote for him. Yeah.
Good stuff. We've got Paul back with us now. We lost him there for a minute. Are you with us?
Sorry about my internet just went offline for a moment, and I managed to get back on.
That's
sorry about that.
We're just going to get. You're getting very positive reviews. We had a little straw poll while you were off screen. Nillis, then Sean Murphy.
I'd like to know what your view is on both Israel-Gaza situation, the Russia-Ukraine situation, and the banking situation as well.
Okay, there we go. So 3 questions for you, Paul, in one. Israel, Gaza, Russia, Ukraine, and the banking situation.
Well, Israel and Gaza. See, the clue is in the name, Britain First. I'm simply not interested in the Middle East unless, like, there's a lot of focus on certain countries in the Middle East, but there's zero focus on Armenia, which is a fellow Christian country, which is actually the southernmost or the easternmost, white Christian country in the world, and they've suffered terrible ethnic cleansing over the last year or two at the hands of the Turks and the Azerbaijanis. And they've lost a whole region, Artsakh, they've lost a whole region of their country. 100,000 of them were forced to move out of a region of their own country. And I see zero focus on this situation. No one seems to give a damn. Not Trump, not the media, no Western countries. They simply don't give a damn. And quite frankly, whatever happens in Israel or Gaza, I'm simply not interested. Now, as a human being, I was absolutely appalled by what happened on October 7th. And having spent my political career confronting and opposing radical Islam, I despise the likes of Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran and so on. And I have got a lot of Iranian friends and people from that part of the world. And I do wish that, they would be able to build decent, civilized countries and nations in the Middle East, especially Iran, if they get to the point where they can overthrow this Islamic extremist government that they've got. But quite frankly, I don't give a damn. As far as I'm concerned, radical Islam is already in London and Luton and Birmingham and Leicester. And so, I'm going to sort out my own country before I start to invest time and energy in the Middle East. I'm simply not interested. What I'm interested in is the British Isles, our Dominion sister nations such as Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, where British people live. The United States, because like 50 million people of British descent live there as well. Europe, the West, Christendom. So the Middle East just doesn't feature on my radar at all. I barely speak about events in the Middle East. I'm simply not interested. As far as I'm concerned, the worst problems of the Middle East are already in East London and Luton and Blackburn and Bradford. We've got enough problems of our own to sort out. But isn't it funny, the Western elites, they want an immediate ceasefire in Gaza where Muslims are dying, but they want forever war, like non-stop war and death in Ukraine, where white people are dying, where thousands of white men are dying. I've been labelled a pro-Russia and pro-Putin many, many times. I've been to Moscow 3 times myself. I've given a speech in the Russian Parliament, the Duma.
You got arrested, didn't you? You got arrested, didn't you, on a really ridiculous terrorism charge because you'd been to Russia and they wanted to have a look at your mobile phone.
Yeah, well, I came back from Moscow the second time it was. And when I got off the plane at Heathrow, there was about 30 police officers waiting for me from SO15 Counter-Terrorism Command. And they arrested me under Schedule 7 of the Terrorism Act, which is what Tommy Robinson is being done for at the moment. He's got a trial coming up next month. And basically, within UK ports of entry or exit, whether it's ferry ports or airports, under terrorism legislation, you've got no right to silence and you've got no right to privacy. So if they arrest you within the boundaries of an airport and they say, give us the code to your mobile phone, you say no, then they can prosecute you under the Terrorism Act 2000, Schedule 7. And I came back from Russia and they jumped on me and they said, give us your PIN codes. And I basically told them to take a running jump. Yeah. So they prosecuted me under Schedule 7 of the Terrorism Act. I was found guilty at Westminster Magistrates Court about 6 months later. And I was only handed a conditional discharge, which is like the biggest slap on the wrist you can be given. So the punishments are not very grave for not giving them the PIN codes. But there was no way. I mean, they were just taking the mickey as far as I was concerned.
Yeah. But
I was
the same
on
thing
my way back.
Same thing has happened to 2 or 3 people that have been over there. People like Richard Medhurst. There's other people from the grey zone as well have come back and have been sort of nabbed on the plane, as it were, and all their devices searched and everything else. You may have been the first one who actually went through that, Paul.
I think on our side of the fence, I was, yeah. Now, Tommy Robinson tried leaving the country about a year ago, but he tried going through the what's it called, the Eurotunnel from
Yeah.
Folkestone to Calais. So they got him there and they held him for 6 hours. They took all his devices and he basically prosecuted him for not giving them his PIN code to his phone. And
Yeah.
he had his reasons to say no. I have my reasons to say no. I am an office bearer of Britain First. I'm not giving the police state access to Britain First membership lists, email lists, and so on. It's just not happening. I'd rather go to prison for 10 years. So that was my reasoning. Why should I give the state access to my phone? It's my personal private domain. But
Yeah.
I was invited to Russia, not by Putin or his party or by the government. I was invited by an opposition party, admittedly an opposition party that's right-wing and nationalistic, but nevertheless an opposition party. They stand against Vladimir Putin in presidential elections. So
Yes.
they're not part of his network at all. And I was invited to give a speech in the Russian parliament, which I did, and I talked about Russia's not the enemy. I don't believe they're the enemy. I believe that they're being antagonized by NATO and the
Yes.
West
I'd agree.
constantly.
Yeah.
But I also, on the flip side, I'm not pro-Putin any longer because I've seen certain things in Ukraine which I just simply can't agree with. You know, Muslim armies from the Caucasus and Chechnya regions being unleashed in Ukraine against, you know, fellow European Christians, and they're committing terrible atrocities. And I can't support that. I can't support Allah Akbar shouting armies being sent into Ukraine to
Okay.
attack fellow. So I'm kind of, when it comes to Ukraine, I just pray. I pray for peace. I pray that that the slaughter can be stopped. And I hope it does, because I think 5,000 white men, white European Christians are losing their lives every single week in that theatre of war. And I just want it to stop. And I've got
Yeah.
criticisms on both sides. I believe that, you know, the European Union and the left-wing establishments in the West, the media and the globalists throughout the entire Western world seem to be egging on, you know, they want the war never to end. They want the war to go on indefinitely, no matter what the circumstances, no matter how many white European Christian men die, lose their lives. They want it to carry on. But on the flip side, because it's Muslims dying in Gaza, they want a ceasefire right now, you know, without any
Yeah.
conditions whatsoever. So, yeah, my position is I don't really give a damn about the Middle East. I do care about what's happening in Ukraine because it's part of Europe, it's part of our civilization. They're white European Christians. I just want the war to stop. I've got criticisms on both sides. You know, I despise Zelensky. I'll be honest with you. I despise him. I think he's a little globalist puppet, a little toad. On the flip side, I don't like the way that Putin has unleashed Islamic units in the war in Ukraine.
Okay.
So I've got,
let's get into that then, because we've got Robert, and I mean I understand you're Britain first. I'm not a huge fan of Zelensky at all. So we'll go Robert, then we go Nillis, then we go Mark Breckle. Robert.
Back to your view of Iran. You said Iran has let me see, a very forceful Islamic government, and yet there are 80 odd synagogues and other churches in Iran. So is it such a terrible government?
I think it is, yes. I don't think there's much difference between the Iranian government and Hezbollah or the Taliban. I despise them all equally. And of course, I wrote a book on radical Islam called The Final Battle. And in this book, I cover the history of Islam attacking everyone, invading countries, slaughtering populations, forcing people to convert from where its inception in Arabia, and it burst out up into Iraq and then Iran. Iran was never a Islamic country until it was conquered by the sword. Millions of people have lost their lives. And yes, I despise the Iranian government. I think they're no better than the Taliban and so on. And I do want to see, I speak to a lot of people who hail from Iran, Christians primarily. And yes, there are churches there, even synagogues, but they are second-class citizens. They do have to be careful. They have to watch their back, and they realise that they're on the back foot.
Okay, Nicholas.
Sorry, I didn't have my hand up. I
Okay,
couldn't put
Mark
my hand
Reckle.
up.
Mr. Golden, you're not going to like me because I spent 22 years in Russia, and I spoke to Chechens, and I've actually spoke to Muslims as well from Ufa and Kazan as well. I spent time when the Georgian wars was on, and I spent time in Russia when the Chechen wars was on, and so I've got quite a lot of knowledge. And I'm afraid you're slightly wrong when it comes to about Ukraine. It's not a sovereign country; it was a republic of Russia, so it's not actually a European country. It's actually a republic of Russia. No. I know where you're coming from. It is quite a technical issue because I've actually been even to Crimea, all over Ukraine, and all over Russia as well. So, and I saw Chechens actually fighting for their own independence. I saw them actually blowing themselves up in Moscow. I watched it on the news, so I have quite good knowledge. So I know where you're coming from. I'm a little bit impartial because I've actually been there so many years. But you always go back to Russia, Paul, and enjoy it. You'd be surprised.
Okay. I've been there 3 times, and I really enjoyed Moscow. I've only been to Moscow, but I've also been to Warsaw in Poland. And one thing that strikes me about Eastern Europe, and I'm sure some of you have been to Eastern Europe, is just the complete difference. Like, you could walk around the center of Moscow for 2 days, you wouldn't find a fag butt on the floor. I mean, it's that level of civic pride in their capital city. And the same in Warsaw. You know, it's just, they're beautiful cities, and they kind of, when I went there, I thought, oh, I wish London was still like this. You know, I wish Brussels and Paris and all these European. I wish we were still like these fabulous cities in Eastern Europe, which are still filled with native people. And I was kind of envious on that.
There is something I do want to ask, because we have at the moment we have a lot of what I would call woke issues with trans nonsense or transgender stuff going on in school, LGBTQ. Is in your opinion everything that is to do with these people that are, shall we say, fracturing society, as in the family unit is getting destroyed by everything that is going on? It almost seems as though the family unit, as well as the people of Britain, are under attack. Do you see it that way, or do you see it as different?
No, I totally agree with what you're saying. I think ever since probably the end of the Second World War, there's a war being waged by the powers that be in this country to destroy us. And they might not admit it, but that's what they want. You know, deep down, people like Angela Rayner and Tony Blair and Keir Starmer, they would be more than happy if we were a subjugated, oppressed, despised, powerless minority in our own country. We spoke a little bit before the show about the Frankfurt School, which was, I think it was in the 1920s it was established, because you had these communist revolutions in Eastern Europe, but it just wasn't materializing in the West.
Yes.
And that in the West, Christianity and traditional values are too strong in the West. So you can't have a communist revolution. So we got to try something different in the West. So the Frankfurt School was a collection, a group of communist intellectuals and strategists, and they came up with a concept called the Long March Through the Institutions.
Yes.
And for since the 1920s, they've basically, anyone who's left wing gets encouraged to go to university. And if you want to be in the upper echelons of society, you have to go to university. You have to get qualifications at that level, degrees, and you have to go
I
to
agree.
university. And you must admit, you must agree that every university in this country is a Marxist stronghold. And we're in a situation now where if you look at opinion polls, you've got 80% of the British people want immigration to be severely restricted. But the top echelons of society, the journalists, the politicians, the judges, the education system, they're almost exclusively hard left, almost Marxist. And so you've got this stranglehold on the top of society. You go to university, you get brainwashed by Marxist ideology, and then you go out and you become a teacher and you inject that into the children's education, or you become a politician, or you become a journalist. You have to go through university to do these things. And when you're in university, you're barraged non-stop with hard left communist ideology. So this long march through the institutions, they've achieved it. It's been successful. They've taken control of the Western world at the top of society. When it comes to influence, entertainment, politics, media, they use these things to control and brainwash people. And it's been incredibly successful. That's how they've taken over the West. Like if you go to a pub in England or a cafe and you try and sit down next to a random person and say to them immigration's wonderful, you'll probably be physically attacked. Because most ordinary people these days are right-wing and patriotic. Just most people are to varying degrees.
Yes.
But then you go to the top of society, you turn on your TV, you see journalists, news presenters, you see actors, you see politicians. They're all hard left to varying degrees. They believe in the communist ideology of multiculturalism, open borders, globalism, internationalism, whatever you want to call it.
Yes.
But this is one of the main things. How are we going to deal with this? And I think you have to, personally, the way to deal with this, the way to it will take a generation to overturn, but you have to depoliticize university. You have to depoliticize upper education. Make it about education, not about political brainwashing. Because yourself, if I went onto a university campus with a union jack, I'd get murdered by insane students and trendy professors.
Yes.
We've got to overturn this now. We've got to make.
We'll have a word about that in a second, because I've got something to ask you there. We're going to hear from Gordon first, who's been waiting patiently. Gordon?
Hello there. Right, my question is one thing. Now, there's a lot of stuff that you're saying that I do agree with, but there is one thing that I don't agree with, and that is quite a few times you've turned around and said, white Christians, right? My question is, what has colour of skin got to do with anything?
Okay, I can answer that.
Oh, yep.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Whether we like it or not, humanity is broken up into different ethnicities, and it's a very fuzzy and lofty idea that you can ignore human differences and create a multicultural society, but it's not going to work because we are essentially very different. White Europeans are very different to Black Africans, very different to Oriental people like Chinese and Japanese. We are just different. And it's it's left-wing ideology. It's the ideology of globalism and internationalism that you can have, what does ethnicity or culture, it doesn't mean anything. We're just humans. That's left-wing ideology. That's the communist ideology that we've been talking about this evening. You will not find it in human society before the emergence of communism in the middle of the 1800s. Before that, it was unthinkable that you would allow millions of non-Europeans into Europe or vice versa.
There we
It
go.
was just not, it was unthinkable. So what you're saying there, what does it matter? Well, of course it matters. I'm not Chinese. I'm not Japanese. Even if I was born in those countries, I'm not Chinese or Japanese. I'm English. Both my parents are English. All my grandparents are English, all the way back to Stonehenge and beyond. That's what I am. I'm a white European Christian. I'm an Englishman, and there's nothing wrong with that. If I said I'm a black African Nigerian and I'm proud of it, you would pat me on the back. But because we've been brainwashed and we're all susceptible to this, entertainment, media, news, relentlessly. We've all been brainwashed to varying degrees, with the idea that white people are bad, white people are terrible, and that we should be ashamed. And what everyone else is fine to celebrate who they are and where they come from. But when it comes to us, we're not allowed. And that's what I've been fighting against all my life, because we should be proud. The British people, the English people, we should be proud. We've got the most amazing history on the face of the planet. As a distinct ethnicity on this planet, we face being scrubbed out and extinct in generations to come. And that's a terrible thing to do. It's genocide.
Yep. Good answer. Hopefully that answers Gordon's question. Eric Jones.
I don't think it's a communist thing at all. I think it's a Jesus thing. What you have done unto the least of my brethren, you have done unto me. That's all I have to say. Have a good day.
Yeah. One of those. Thank you very much, Eric. When it comes to that, and the Lee Williams.
A quick one. Is the Zionists anything to do with the whole situation of what's been erupting around the world? Just as a question.
So
Israel, as an example.
Israel's hold over America, basically, you're talking about, aren't you?
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, we're back to that again. Okay, Paul.
Well, I obviously there is a situation in America, specifically in America, with AIPAC and so on, that politicians
Should we have
over
no
there.
lobbyists at all, Paul? Should we have no
Pardon?
lobbyists? Should we have no lobbyists whatsoever in Parliament?
Well, absolutely, there shouldn't be. You shouldn't be able to pressure or influence elected officials. It should be banned. It should be heavily censored, because what you're going to end up with is the people with money and influence and power leaning on representatives of the people and distorting democracy. So yes,
let me just get this clear, Paul. If Britain first were in power, there'd be no big pharma, there'd be no Israel lobby, there'd be no climate lobbyist allowed in the Houses of Parliament.
100%.
Okay.
It would all be banned. Because it is a form of corruption, and we can't allow corruption within a democracy because it derails it very quickly derails it. Even silly things like parliamentary expenses, all these MPs just getting hundreds of thousands of pounds for second home, third homes, getting everything from feather dusters to bloody cab rides on their expenses. It's corrupted the system, and it's made them turn them into greedy bastards, quite frankly. So yes, lobbying, parliamentary expenses, all of it should be scrubbed, and corruption laws should be vigorously enforced. But unfortunately, the people who enforce it are the ones themselves engaging in the corruption in the Houses of Parliament. So it's a catch-22. So we do need a political revolution, a revolution in standards and morality in politics.
So there's two big questions I have to ask you. I'm afraid I do have to ask you. I probably know what your answer is going to be on this. Climate change. People are. Is this just one huge tax scam?
Yes and no. What's happening is there's something going on at a very, very slow pace. And what the left is doing is they're using it and they're turning it into an existential crisis so that they can push for more control. Like if you speak to Elon Musk, for example, he knows a lot about climate change and global warming and all this. And over a big enough and long enough time frame, yes, it would be a problem. but it's not an immediate problem. We can see that with the data, we can see that with the science. But what the left is doing is they're taking it, turning it into something else, and saying basically the world's going to end unless you give us the control and give us the taxes. Because it's a form of communism. Communism is all about control and your money. They want all your money. They want you to work and you get no money. That's what's happened in every communist socialist country.
Own nothing and be happy, as Klaus Schwab might say.
Exactly, yes. So they're creating existential crises that can give them more power, more control. It's like this new thing with Starmer. Well, we've got illegal immigration. We've got all these Africans and Middle Eastern men pouring over the channel. We could stop that like that with the Royal Navy, or even just stop putting them in hotels and just start deporting them. But they're not doing that. They're facilitating it and allowing it. But at the same time, they're trying to take advantage of your anger about these boat migrants to introduce what they're calling a national ID card, which is a state mechanism of control. Because we've seen this in totalitarian regimes like China. They used COVID passports to control the population. And basically, when people went out onto the streets and started protesting, the Chinese government just turned all their COVID passports red. So they had to go home. They couldn't use public transport, couldn't buy food, couldn't do anything. You had to go home and stay there. And this is what the national ID thing's like. It's not about fighting illegal immigration. They could stop that overnight. It's about bringing in those sophisticated, advanced mechanisms of totalitarian control over a population.
And I probably know what the answer is going to be to my next question. Digital ID and central digital banking.
Exactly. Yeah, I think I just covered this.
Yes.
It's all about control. It's all about implementing their left-wing ideology and maintaining control, because they can see at the moment they're losing control. There's a flag on every lamppost out there. There's migrant hotel protests all around the country. Look at the size of Tommy's demonstration recently, last weekend. Look at the size of our.
It was only 100,000.
Look at our one in Manchester, which really surprised me. It was, a vast amount of people turned up. So they're losing control. And what they want is mechanisms of control in place for when it truly kicks off in this country, because they know it's going to kick off. They're like us. They know. We know deep down it's going to end up kicking off in this country because of the policies. Civil war, whatever you want to call it. They know that's going to happen. So they want
Paul, is it going to have to, because we are so far apart? There used to be a time when, like here, I mean, you're here. Some people will agree with you, some people won't, but we're here and we're in a space where everybody debates. Are we so far apart now that the left and the right can't even talk to each other anymore?
I think it's coming to a head because the left, like I said, the left-wing plans that were put into motion just after the Second World War are starting to come to completion, and it's creating a titanic backlash. People are starting to wake up. People are starting to question. People are becoming more patriotic. People are becoming more angry. 10 years ago, I would never have dreamed of standing above motorway bridges with a big banner that said Keir Starmer is a wanker. You've probably seen these. You've probably seen the video.
We have. Yeah, we've actually featured your banners on a few shows.
But look at the support. Look at the support they get, and it's crude, but it's captured the spirit, the essence of the way people are thinking at the moment. The mood of the nation, so to speak.
Is that also as well part of the working man? Because the working man is going to use that sort of language. We all use it. And is it that the working man, you're so successful because you are? There's no question that even people who dislike you say you've had a real impact on politics. Now, here's the thing. They've just forgotten the working class people, haven't they?
Of course, because like I said before, about the top of society, which is politics, the media, entertainment, trade unions, universities, the top of society, police chiefs, so on. They've gone through the university Marxist brainwashing establishment, and they're all exclusively left wing, and that's what they're enforcing. And then you've got the ordinary mass of just general ordinary people who go about, who have to pay their bills, who have to pay their mortgages and have families and so on. We're the ones taking the brunt of the left-wing policies, and that's why there's such a disconnect in society. But when it kicks off, and it will kick off in this country, the government wants in place already the mechanisms of control. And one of them recently was the Online Safety Act. You probably know about this, yeah. The Online Safety Act, if there was a crisis in this country, then the Online Safety Act allows the establishment to completely censor social media if there's a crisis.
It does.
It gives them the mechanism that they need for the future. And when it comes to national IDs, they need that in place. They also want all this, did you say before, digital banking, digital currencies?
Yeah, central digital currency banking, basically, so they can shut you down if you try to go anywhere.
Exactly. So basically, if I step out of line and say something I shouldn't have, or post something to social media that I shouldn't have posted, then the government can just flip a switch and I've got no money suddenly. And that's why they want to go cashless, because then going cashless is the ultimate control over a population. They'll just turn off your
if Britain first get in, cash is king. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, obviously, obviously society is moving towards a digital way of life. I rarely use cash these days. I always flip my card, do the contactless payment. So, but cash would not be outlawed because that would be a step towards tyranny. But under the present politicians, the present lot at Westminster who are corrupt and evil, we wouldn't want them in charge of a cashless society because they will abuse they will abuse their power.
So that's almost every subject covered apart from two. So let's get into these two then. If Britain first got into power, would they stop LGBTQ activism in schools?
Absolutely, yeah. And we want a traditional Christian society where sexuality is a private matter. We don't want it. We don't want sexuality flaunted in society. We want to go back essentially to how society was in the 1950s: structured marriage, traditions, big families, morality, decency. It's part of left-wing ideology that if you over-sexualize a society, then it becomes corrupt and falls apart and makes it easy pickings for disintegration. That's whole part and parcel of communist ideology. In fact, the Frankfurt School, which I was talking to, one of their main issues with the West was that Christianity and traditional marriage and the family unit and gender roles was too powerful in the West. And that was stopping them from having a communist revolution. So their attack on Christianity and the family and traditional values is at the center of what's happening in the West at the moment. And until we go back to a traditional way of life, basic way of life, a Christian way of life, then we're not going to be able to rescue our nations from what's happening. It's not going to happen.
Okay. Mark Breckwell, I knew you were going to come and stick up for gay rights.
Well, the thing is, like I said to you before, in Russia, it's LGBT is barred. It's an extremist.
Yeah.
But again, in Kiev, they're walking around guys with frocks on. In Brussels, there was a massive LGBT event there. So it's spreading all over Europe. It's only Russia that's barred it. So it just shows you the difference between the West, the West and Russia. It's just it should be barred. It should be barred all over. It's crazy.
Let's get into that then, because there's been, when I was talking about the left and the right not being able to talk to each other, this has never been more crystallized, Paul, than when Charlie Kirk was assassinated by a trans gunman. There's lots of people have different theories. But the left had an absolute meltdown about it, and were quite horrible about a guy who's been shot in front of his wife and his small child or whatever. And the left meltdown about this is quite incredible. It's almost as though they don't have any filter for humanity anymore.
Well, they always talk about, I mean, you never stop hearing leftists saying that we on the right, we've got no empathy, whether it's for migrants or refugees or whatever. But then it's always projection. It's always hypocrisy at its finest, because they've shown absolutely no empathy whatsoever for people who've been killed. They're quite happy. The default position of the left after what happened to Charlie Kirk was good. We're glad he's dead. And that's so many left wingers took that line, and it's shocking. How can you share a democracy and a society with people like that who are quite happy for you to be dead? So I think that while it's nice to talk about democratic values and freedom of speech and so on, I think that the left have shown that they don't want to coexist with us, that they don't want to live side by side with people they disagree with. They want us dead. They want us silenced, censored, or dead. And they're not going to stop until they achieve that. So I think that, we're almost heading into a post-democratic world where basically if we don't minimize silence these people, they are going to kill us, whether it's with their policies or whether it's with tyranny. One way or another, they're determined to destroy us.
Are we living through? Because you hear about these, don't you? The 13th century, 15th century, 18th century. Are we in another dark ages?
Yeah, I think we're slipping into a dark age. Absolutely. And I think it's going to be horrific and terrible, and it's going to destroy Western civilization. But like, our job now is to survive. We've got a right to survive and to fight for survival. Yeah. And I think that,
by that, Paul, I am going to ask you a very, very dodgy question. Vaccines. Are you in favour of, being jabbed up, or your children having 74 jabs before they're 18 years of age, and jabbing the elderly with these COVID-19 vaccines?
Well, I always try to avoid this, because I see it as a medical issue, but it's become a political hot potato, and it doesn't matter what you say, you're going to offend someone. I started off.
Should it be? Let me ask you this question then. Should it be mandated, or should it be the individual's choice if they want to have it or not?
Yeah. So I started off probably like a lot of people, thinking that we had a terrible virus working its way through society, and that they rush for a vaccine for it, and to save as many elderly people's lives as possible, we need to all get jabbed up and all this. But when I saw that, I fundamentally just completely disagreed with their efforts to try and force people to do this, and the intolerance they displayed towards people who said no was just disgusting.
Did that set alarm bells ringing?
Yeah. No one should be forced to, in a medical sense, to be having chemicals injected into them.
Yeah.
If people wanted to jump on that and take part in it, that's a personal thing. But what sent alarm bells for me was when during the COVID thing, this really shocked me. During the whole COVID thing, I went on a holiday to Italy. I went to Milan touring. I went to touring because I wanted to try and be close to the Shroud of Turin and all that. I'm a staunch Christian. But when I was in Milan, they had the bloody COVID passports. So I was everywhere I went, and I mean everywhere, I had to get my phone out and scan this COVID passport, and it was all based on tests and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I just thought, this is horrific. This is tyrannical. This is dystopian. And I thought, this is terrible. And I thought, this can't, like, this is what they're after. It's just another thing of control, another mechanism of control. They're taking something that exists, blowing it out of proportion, and then using it to take away your freedom. Exactly the same as climate change. Now, look what happened in China. They forced everyone to have a COVID passport. If you went out and protested against the government, they turned your COVID passport to red. Suddenly, you can't go to a supermarket, you can't use public transport, you can't go into a shop, you can't do anything but go home. So, yeah, during that whole period, I went from, you know, basically just like most ordinary people, and then I almost became a conspiracy theorist because I just saw too many red flags. You know, you've got to be forced to take this vaccine. It's not a personal choice. You've got to be forced to do it, or you're going to lose your job. And then they tried bringing in vaccine passports and all this, and I just thought there's too many red flags here. This is dodgy.
It's okay. It's just seized like you did earlier, Paul. That's not a problem. I was just
Yeah,
going to
so
say.
I think I'm back.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. I'm
he's
back
back
again. I do apologise. We had a particularly, shall we say, strong gust of wind. We're undergoing literally a typhoon as we're speaking. Mark Breckle.
Well, again, I had to have a jab before I went to Russia in COVID and at Ukraine. I had to have a jab coming back from Russia. I had to have a jab actually in Czechoslovakia because they didn't believe my COVID pass. And
wow.
I went through Italy and they're all got the masks on, and it was frightening. It looked like some type of different world. And then I must have had at least 4 jabs with traveling, and it's no fun being in Ukraine, in Kiev, when with a COVID, because it was you couldn't go out after 10 o'clock.
No,
So
absolutely.
I dread to think what's left of my body now.
One of those. Sean Murphy.
Well, Warren, to be honest, I saw through this for getting these jabs almost straight away, because I saw on the telly that people like Boris Johnson and all those other criminal Sir this and Sir that were pushing it so hard for people to get these jabs. And being, as you know, a medical person myself, with a lot of experience, I looked at it and I thought there's something wrong here. And as for face masks, I'd worn a face mask for 40 years working in theatre, and I knew that face masks were actually no good. In fact, to the extent that I went shopping down in Princess Risborough into Tesco's
very quickly,
wearing full IPE and a full army issue respirator, and people got really scared.
As they would do, to walk around in a wetsuit.
But I done it on purpose to do that.
Yep. Okay. Lee Williams.
A quick one. I don't know if they're related, but you got Keir Starmer. I call him Wayne Keir because that's his first name. So has he got a match, the so-called Majesty as well?
You wouldn't be surprised. You wouldn't be surprised. It is almost the end of the show. Paul, you were only going to come on for half an hour. You've been here for 2 hours. You've been an absolute fantastic sport. Thank you so much for coming along. And of course, Eric Jones, very quickly.
I want to thank you, Paul. I appreciate your views, and I believe you're an honest man. Whether I agreed with all of it or not, I think you're being very sincere. Thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
One of those, and of course we do have people on here, and they're allowed to speak and give their views, which is an open forum. Sean Murphy.
Yeah, Paul, you're a real trooper, and I agree with almost everything you say, to be honest, because I've been around for a long while, and I see things for what they are. And you've got the pretty much the same view that I've got. Not because you come to South East London like I do.
Don't we all? Mark Chamberlain. Mark Chamberlain.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for coming tonight. How do we get involved?
Sorry, say that again.
How do we get involved?
How do they get
All right,
involved
well,
with Britain First?
the main thing to do is to go onto the Britain First website, britainfirst.org, or Google Britain First, and go onto our website and just join as a member. And if you join as a member, you'll get all the emails, all the text messages, which will tell you of local meetings, local activities, everything that's going on, all of our campaigns. It's just basically you just plug yourself in to the movement,
Yeah.
so to speak. Yeah.
All right.
There we
Brilliant.
are.
Thank you.
You're more than welcome. Paul, where can people find you? I mean, I think you've almost answered that, but where can people find you on your social media? Where can they come and join Britain First?
Well, to join Britain First, you have to go onto our website. In terms of social media, I'm on X, of course. I'm also on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. Don't know how for how long, but at the
Yes.
moment, I'm on those platforms as well.
Fantastic. Paul, I can't thank you enough for giving up so much of your time to come and answer our questions today. And this, of course, is going out on live on YouTube. And please do go and give Paul a follow and go and have a look at Britain First website.
Am I all right to say, Warren?
Yes.
Am I all right to just say, I've touched upon a lot, basically brief details of what I've been up to over the last 26 years.
Yes.
If you wanted to know more, then go onto Amazon or the Britain First website and you can order a copy of my book. Like what I've told you today, it's obviously expanded upon in detail. And there's obviously there's a lot to go through there. Like I've detailed all of the persecution, the suffering, the attacks, the terrorism that I've been subjected to. I've detailed my entire career forensically in my book, The Battle for Britain.
So there we go. On Amazon, Battle for Britain by Paul Golding, the leader of Britain First, the Britain First Party. Paul, it's been an absolute joy and a pleasure. I hope you'll come back and see us again. And of course, what is next for Britain First? What is the next goal that you are out to achieve?
Well, at the moment, we're just becoming active. We're focusing on our branch network around the country, regional meetings. We've got our national conference coming up in a couple of months. But the weather's starting to take a bad turn now. Autumn has officially begun. So we're kind of just winding down for the year now. And next year, our first big rally, our first big public protest march is going to be on February the 21st in Manchester. That will be a huge rally. And we're just in a political sense, we're just monitoring the situation because, like I say, every party on the right now has got to contend with the reform juggernaut taking all the votes. So we're kind of locked out of electoral politics at the moment. So we're just focusing more on street activism. And you can see, like, I was up outside Downing Street a couple of days ago with the big Keir Starmer's wanker banner right outside Downing Street. And we've got these gigantic English flags that we're hanging off of high-rise flats around the country. We've got so much that we're doing, but it's on a smaller scale now until the end of the year, and then next year we're going to be creating a lot of fuss.
Fantastic, Paul. Thank you once again for your time, everybody. Paul Golding from the Britain First Party. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you very much for your time this evening. I really enjoyed it.
You enjoyed it too. Thanks ever so much. There we go. That was Paul Golding from the Britain First Party. Whether you agree with him, whether you don't agree with him, there you go. At least you got a chance to hear what they're all about. That's the second, I suppose, political party that we've had on here. There will be a new show tomorrow morning, and it will be a very long one because we were only supposed to do half an hour with this gentleman, but we've ended up doing 2 hours, and there were people that wanted lots of questions and everything else. And by then, the typhoon will have passed, so we can make sure we're on the air at all times. I'm sorry if you tuned in for the actual new show. We'll do it first thing in the morning, 7:30, and we'll go on till about 11. We'll go on till about 9 o'clock. Mark Breckle, he's about to give me a rocket now. Mark Breckle.
I bet you love getting these people on that love the only pro Russian in the village.
Yeah, it's one of them, mate. I thought you were in the news, but then again,
well, the thing is, though, I've just a friend's been texting me now, and there's just been another drone attacking and Crimea, and it's ironic.
Send me the updates,
Warren.
and we'll do that tomorrow.
Yeah,
send me the updates, ironic. And we'll do it in the morning. I'll send everybody the ping out in the morning, so you've got it.
Yeah,
fantastic. Gordon, then Nillis.
Well, do you know, I love to hear everybody's point of view and everything else. I'm a big fan of that. But I still don't feel I got an answer to why he kept going on about white British and white Christians, because there is a lot of black people that's lived in this country for a lot, that were born in this country, their parents were born in this country. To me, that was the only bit that kind of bothered me, was the fact that it was bringing the colour of the Christian. Colour of skin shouldn't matter a difference. I agree. We've got to deal with the illegal immigrants and the immigrants. I agree with all that. But
yeah,
bringing people's colour of skin into it, that's not necessarily needed.
Well, we'll bring him back on and get him to clarify. We'll bring him back on, Gordon, and get him to clarify.
There's all good and bad all around the world. That's the simple fact.
But it's fine. This is, as I say, we bring them on. And the good thing is, Gordon, whether you are enjoyed what he had to say or not had to say, do you know the wonderful thing about it? You actually got to ask the question.
Yes, but the other good thing about it is you get to hear, like, because he did have a lot of good things to say as well. The good thing is you need in this